Hey, do you own a ton of sample packs like we do? Well, then you know how much work it is to chop them up and rearrange them. Well, I think I found an app that makes that process more easy and efficient than ever before, and I want to share it with you guys right after this. Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am your host, Vortex, from MobileMusicPro.com, your home for mobile music production. And if you are new to the channel, what we do here is release weekly videos teaching people how to produce music on their iOS device. But first, before we get into it, I do very much want to thank Audio Modern for sponsoring this video, because sponsorships like this do help keep the channel alive and help it remain 100% fully independent. Now, the core concept of this app is pretty simple, which is to provide the ability to rearrange different parts of different loops together in a sequence. And we even have a video about this on the channel that you can check out, where we showcase some of these more traditional ways of chopping up loops inside of CUBASIS. But this app really takes loop manipulation and rearranging to a whole nother level. And it does this by simplifying the process with maximum efficiency, all while deploying those familiar yet robust randomization controls that Audio Modern is so well known for. Alright, and now with that intro aside, let's start playing with Audio Modern's brand new Loopmix app and show you why this app is truly amazing. Now guys, this app is super deep, so we're only going to be covering the main sections of it today in order to get you up and running with it as soon as possible. Now the app does support both AUV3 and standalone mode, but as per usual on this channel, we will be featuring it inside of CUBASIS 3 in AUV3 mode. Alright, now let's bring up the app and do a quick user interface overview. So first we'll make it full screen here. And as you can see, it is an absolutely gorgeous app. Now, unfortunately, it really only looks good in full screen mode because as you can see in compact mode, you can see it is pretty hard to read. So if you are using this app inside of a DAW like CUBASIS, you probably want to keep it full screened. Now, right away, we can see the app is broken down into a few different sections here, including the very top section here, where you'll find your preset browser, your DAW sync option, and your BPM. Below that, we have our randomization section here. And beneath that, we have our 6 main tabs that the app is separated into, including the sequencer, rearrange, reverse, density, volume, and pitch. And each one of these sections will feature 3 different buttons here at the top. The first one will be the randomization button, the second will be the reset button, and the third will be the enable disable button. When this is disabled, the randomization button will no longer affect it, and it will remain the same as it is. But when you turn it back on, it will begin to be affected again by those randomization settings. Now below that we have the main section of the app, which is where you'll find all of the individual slices. And you can enable and disable those simply by tapping on them. Now beneath the main sequencer section here, you will have a performance section, and we're going to get into both the performance section and the randomization section a little bit later in the video. But first, let's go ahead and give you a quick demonstration. Now currently the app is set to 175 BPM, but it does support that DAW sync option, so as soon as we tap on this, it will sync to your host app or whatever DAW that you have the app hosted inside of. So as you can see inside of CUBASIS, we have 150 BPM, so when I tapped on that sync button, it set the app to 150 BPM. So let's hit play now and tap the randomization button a few times so that we can get a few different instances of these sequences. So as you saw there, different slices were being selected and deselected. And if you were paying close attention, you might have noticed that the first track was visually changing where the rest of the tracks were not. And that kind of confused me a little bit at first, but all it means is that the loop is longer than the rest of the loops, because the Loopmix does allow you to combine loops of different length together in one project. So the first loop was 8 bars, so after the first 4 bars were played, it then displayed the second 4 bars. And as you can see, the app allows you to have 6 different tracks or 6 different loops to be able to be rearranged together in a near infinite amount of ways. Plus, the app comes with 1.6 gigabytes of sounds and presets to really help you get started. And of course, you can mute and solo those tracks with the S and M buttons here, or you could go into the mixer here at the top of the screen, and tap on mixer, and solo and mute each individual track this way as well. And from this mixer, you can also adjust the volume of each of the individual tracks, as well as the master volume. As expected, adjusting this volume will adjust the volume for all the individual tracks. And we can close that mixer by tapping it once more. And on the far right hand side, you'll also find a lock button at the end of each one of these tracks. This will simply make sure that this track is unaffected from the randomization settings. So no matter how many times you tap that random button, this track will remain unaffected. And you can see that here when we tap the random button a few times, that bottom track is being unchanged. And you can easily clear any one of these tracks by tapping on the erase button just to the right of that lock button. We can erase any one of these that we want. And then we can use our undo and redo buttons just to the right of the preset browser to get those back if we want. Now before we do go any further, let's start a brand new project and show you how to load sounds into the app. Alright, now we have a brand new fresh project loaded up inside of Loopmix, and we're going to show you how to load some sounds. Now there's a couple of different ways to go about this. What you can do first is just simply select a track. Any one of these tracks, in fact, we'll select track number 1, and then hit the plus button here. That will then bring up the preset and sample browser. On the left-hand side is where you can choose your presets, packs, and samples. And in the center is where it will show those samples or the presets. And in the right-hand section, we'll show you the different sounds that you have loaded for each one of these individual tracks. So we can quickly select user samples and have a list of all the samples that we've added so far. And we can audition each and every one of these by tapping on play. And we can begin loading them into the project by dragging and dropping them onto one of the 6 available tracks. So let's load one more here, drag this on over to track number 2. So now if we close our preset browser, we'll see both of these loops loaded on tracks 1 and then 2 respectively. Now that's one way to load sounds individually, but you can also load up an entire project of sounds as well. To do that, we'll navigate to our preset browser at the very top, and you'll see on the left-hand side we can browse our presets and packs. Now the difference between preset and pack is essentially the pack is just the sounds, but the presets are all the projects that you make with those sounds. So you can think of presets as project files essentially. And of course you can select from factory presets or your own user presets. And for now we'll select on factory presets, and we'll bring up that same drum and bass kit that we brought up before. Now again, it gets a little confusing because the preset name is called DNB kit, but this actually isn't a kit or a pack. It's a preset called DNB kit. So it's a preset or a project file made using a DNB pack of sounds. So we'll load up the first one by simply double tapping it. Now we already loaded up our custom sounds, but if you didn't have those sounds loaded yet, you would simply tap on the plus button here beneath any one of these tracks that doesn't have a sound, and that will bring up iPad's native file browser. And you can easily switch out an existing sound the same way by simply tapping on one of the sounds you've already selected and choosing a different one from your file browser. But we've already got ours loaded, so we'll hit cancel. And you can even assign genres and specific styles to your presets, which you can then search with the search function at the top. Now, if you'd like to see which sounds are in each one of these individual presets or project files, you can just simply select one and then tap on the down arrow on the right-hand side. And once again, preview each one of those sounds by tapping on play. And like any good preset browser, you can definitely hit the favorite to save all of your favorite presets. Those will then show up in your favorites folder on the left-hand side, making it super easy to recall all the presets you like the most. And that's how easy it is to load factory sounds or your own custom sounds into Loopmix. Now let's take a little bit closer look at the sequencer page and then check out the rest of the effects pages after that. Alright, here we are back again on our sequencer page, and the first thing I want to talk about is the lock button. Now this lock button actually works across any one of these pages, but for now we're going to stick with our sequencer page here. Now earlier we showed you that you can lock an entire track by tapping on the lock button, but you can also lock individual slices from being changed as well with that lock button at the top. So once we do have that lock button at the top engaged, we could then tap on any individual slice in any one of these tracks. And what that will do is we'll make sure that those specific ones that we select will not get affected. So if we were to randomize now, you'll notice that these 4 slices will not change and they will stay enabled. So let's now hit the random button a couple times to see this in action. You can see slices all around those being enabled and disabled, but the ones with the lock remain unaffected. Now another really cool feature is the ability to actually slow or speed up your loops. So let's just unlock these real quick. And then let's highlight an entire track here to make sure that we can hear something. We'll select all of these squares, and now we'll just solo this track. Now your speed settings are located at the top right above the sequencer here. And let's demo these real quick. So very, very cool. And you can do that for one track, or you can do that for all the tracks by selecting the all. Now after that, there is one more cool setting I want to show you on this sequencer page, and that is the anchor track. Now currently the anchor track is set to random, but we can change this to any one of these 6 different tracks. So for example, if we were to set it to track number 1, let's set it to number 1, the first track now becomes the anchor track, which means that this becomes the least affected track out of all the tracks. So if I were to hit the random button a few times here, you can see that the track with the most highlighted squares is going to be the first track, where the second and third track only have a few highlighted squares. Now, if we were to set the anchor track to track number 2 should then have the most highlighted squares. So let's hit the random button. All right, perfect. So track number 2 now, being the anchor track, is going to have the most highlighted slices compared to the first and the third track. And of course, that fourth track remains unaffected because it has the lock enabled on the far right hand side. And it looks like there's actually one more final feature that I do want to discuss on this page before we move on, and that is going to be the randomization settings here. Here you'll notice it says subtle, normal, and complex. Now when you choose subtle, there won't be that much of a change. If you choose normal, there'll be a little bit more change. And if you choose complex, as you guessed it, there'll be a bunch more change. So if I were to hit the random button here, you'll see a bunch of different slices being affected. Where if I were to dial that back down to subtle, you'll see that there's less slices moving around here. You can see it's mostly just our anchor track there that's being highlighted. Only a couple of other slices are being selected. And here in this particular randomization, no slices in track 1 or 3 were highlighted at all. Now personally, I do like to keep it on normal or complex. Now we already talked about changing your speed settings down here, but you can also change those on the left-hand side as well. The default here is going to be 1/8 note, but you can set this to quarter notes, half notes, 16th, or 32. And that of course will work in conjunction with the speed settings over here on the right. Alright, and that is pretty much it for the sequencer page. Before we do move on to the rest of the pages though, I do want to dive into a little bit more detail about the randomize settings. Now if we do look at the top of the page here, we can see Audio Modern's signature randomization settings. Of course we're greeted with that big huge random button in the center, but to the left of that, we have a couple of different randomization options. Now the first one is going to be your standard randomization button, but the second one is more of a remix button, and essentially makes much more subtle changes. Now personally, I never use this one. I like to stick with the random, as the remix just doesn't seem to change enough settings for me, but I could be using it incorrectly. So let's keep that on the regular setting for now. Now just to the right of our main randomization button in the center, we have our toggle randomization button. And essentially this is kind of like a latch, where as long as you're holding it down, the settings will continuously change while it's playing. And then as soon as you let up, it'll stop changing again. Now once again, I don't really use this feature too much. In fact, I use the infinite randomization button a lot more, which is coming up in just a second. But just to the right of that, we have something that Audio Modern is calling a disintegration mode. Now this feature is a little bit out of scope for this video, but essentially what it does is it removes more and more slices as time goes on. Almost like creating a big huge outro. But just to the right of that, we have the star of the show, which is going to be our infinite randomization button. Now this is really cool, and I definitely use this feature a lot. And all it really does is once you have it enabled, it'll then hit that random button at the end of every bar. And you can easily adjust how many bars that is with the number right next to it. So you can increase that or decrease that. So let's just keep this on 1 for now so that it will randomize after every bar. So a very cool feature there, essentially an automatic infinite randomization button. Alright, now that we've gone over all the randomization settings and the sequencer page, it's now time to go into the rest of the effect pages. So let's first start out with the rearrange page. Now this page allows you to do exactly what it says, which is rearrange the different slices. So for example, we can drag slice number 8 over here to slice number 7, or slice number 7 over here to slice number 8. So very quick and effective way there to rearrange your slices. And then on the reverse page, you can do just what you would imagine. By tapping on any one of these, it will enable a reverse mode for that particular slice. So we can reverse any slice that we want, and it will show a little R on there. And we'll even visually update the waveform there, which is a pretty nice touch for sure. And after that, we have our density, which is essentially a repeat page. I'm not sure why they call it density instead of just repeat. So here we can select any one of these slices and drag upwards to increase the amount of repeats all the way up to 8, or decrease back to the original, which is just 1. So again, very nice and simple, yet extremely effective. So let's move on to the volume page. Again, you can adjust any one of these slices up or down to make them either quieter or louder, with the volume number being represented by the number there. For example, this is 90, so if we want to make it full, you just drag that up to 100. And now it's at full volume. And vice versa, you can drag that all the way down, and now it will be extremely quiet. And then finally, we have our pitch page. Once again, super simple, you can just drag up or down to go up or down the scale. And I believe these numbers represent semitones. So you can drag this all the way up to -2, -3 semitones, or maybe this one up 1 semitone, or up 2 semitones. And you can even choose the algorithm here, whether that's just going to be the standard pitch shift, or the formant pitch shift, or the S+F, which is essentially a combination of the two, giving you the best of both worlds. And of course, you can easily choose your scale on the far right-hand side as well. This will make sure everything stays nicely in key. Alright, now before we move on to the performance section here at the bottom of the screen, I did want to show you guys the export functionality here at the top of the screen. Loopmix makes it really easy to export everything. All you have to do is tap on the export button here, like we said, at the top right hand corner. And here we're given a couple of different options, including the ability to export our audio or our MIDI. Now you can export the tracks individually here by selecting them, or you can select the entire loop here at the bottom. So if we tap on the full loop here, it'll just take a second and then bring up that familiar iOS save dialog. From here we can do anything we want, including save to files. Now if you are using CUBASIS, you probably want to save this inside of the CUBASIS directory, so that you can then access that really easy through the media bay. Same goes for the export of your MIDI. If you were to tap on any one of these, it'll bring up that dialog, and from here we can save it right into our CUBASIS 3 folder. We can just hit save real quick, and then browse our media bay, go to our MIDI, and as you can see we've exported a couple of different ones here, so we'll just select one and drag it on in. And as you can see, if we open this up, each one of these MIDI notes essentially represents one of the slices inside of Loopmix. Because remember, there is an option inside of Loopmix to trigger the slices via MIDI instead of automatically by the sequencer. And we'll show you how to do that in the very next section. Alright, now let's take a look at the performance features of Loopmix. Now, as we just mentioned, you can trigger the slices inside of Loopmix automatically with just a sequencer, or you can trigger them with MIDI. And that includes MIDI that you've recorded or MIDI from a MIDI keyboard. So if we look at the top left-hand section of the app here, we can see that we have either a play button or a piano button. The playback button will allow you to trigger all of these slices automatically by the sequencer, and then the piano button here will allow you to trigger these slices via MIDI. So if we take a look here at the bottom of the screen, we can see that we can actually trigger each one of these tracks by tapping on these keys. And then the C1 key, the first key in the first C octave, will trigger all the tracks to play at once. Now I've been calling these tracks so far, but you can call them stems as well. Now you'll notice when I do trigger these stems, you're still hearing the effects applied to them. But if you would like to hear those slices being played back without the effects, you can just tap on the FX button here at the top. And there's even a latch or a hold button here as well, so that you can keep the loop playing continuously. And it will keep playing until you tap that hold button once more. And now the next octave of keys is reserved for our sequencer. In the previous octave, when we tapped any one of these, it will play through the entire stem, regardless if you have all of the slices selected or not. But in the sequencer mode, it will only play exactly what you see here in the sequencer. And there's also a hold or a latch button for this octave as well. Now the next section over here, just to the right of that, is going to be for remixes. And this section is really cool because it will essentially generate remixes for you on the fly, which of course is essentially just hitting that randomization button a bunch of different times in a row. So let's click generate. And now we have a whole new batch of remixes indicated by these red notes. So we can tap on any one of these. And they'll all be different. And of course, you can instantly clear those if you'd like, one at a time, or you can clear them all with the clear all button. Now, when you do find a sequence that you like, you can definitely save that instantly by just tapping on one of these remixes at the bottom. Now you can see that this particular remix is saved in this lime green key. And you can do that over and over again. We can randomize again, tap on another green key. And now we can go back and forth between the two. And of course, you can drag these around if you want, move them to different sections, or move them to different keys rather. So just a really great workflow here for saving all the different ideas that you come up with. Alright, and now it's time again for our final thoughts. And if you are still rocking with us, we just can't thank you enough for being here, especially those folks that are here every single Wednesday and Friday to watch our live streams and our live premieres. Now guys, I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are about this app, so definitely make sure you leave them in the comments below, because I can't be the only one that loves audio modern apps this much. Now I'm not gonna lie guys, I do personally prefer Scalar a little bit over Chord Jam, but Audio Modern does have so many amazing apps that I do use every day, and it's crazy that some of them are completely free. Apps like PanFlow, GateLab, and FilterStep are absolute necessities for most producers' toolboxes. Though I can't really seem to find any competition for the Loopmix app, but hey, if you guys know of any, definitely leave them in the comments below because we'd love to test them out. Otherwise, it seems like Audio Modern has a pretty unique hit on their hands. And of course, we always have new things happening here at the channel, including sample packs, contests, and much more. So if you do want to keep up with everything that we're doing, definitely sign up for our completely free newsletter at MobileMusicPro.com/newsletter. And so until next time, everybody, keep talking music, and we'll see you later. Hey everybody, Vortex here to remind you to click that link in the description if you do want access to free sounds, guides, and more. And to tell you to check out the over 150 other videos we have about producing music on your iPhone or iPad that we know you'll love.